The cooled air doesn't ask for permission. It settles into the lungs, sharp and unforgiving, much like the reality of the man who decides to separate himself from the herd. Imagine the streets of Small Heath at 4 in the morning. The fog is a thick, grey curtain, swallowing the light of the gas lamps. There is no crowd. There is no applause. There is only the rhythmic metallic strike of leather soles against damp cobblestone. This is the sound of Thomas Shelby's solitude. Most men fear this silence. They fill it with meaningless chatter, with the cheap warmth of a pub, or the desperate validation of a group that doesn't actually care if they live or die. But for the few who understand the Shelby Method, this silence is not a void. It is a laboratory. It is the only place where a man can finally hear his own voice over the screaming insecurities of the world. When you walk alone, you are doing something inherently dangerous to the status quo. You are becoming unpredictable. The world is built on patterns. Society tracks you by your associations, your friends, and the people you seek to impress. When you stand in a circle, you have handles. People can grab you, pull you, and manipulate you through your need to belong. But the man who walks alone has no handles. He has removed the hooks that the world uses to tether him to mediocrity. You see it in the way Tommy moves through a room. Even when he is surrounded by his brothers, he is essentially solitary. He is the ghost in the machine. He is dangerous because you cannot find his center of gravity. You cannot threaten a man with social exclusion when he has already excluded himself. This is the predator's paradox. The herd feels safe because of their numbers, but their numbers are their greatest weakness. In a group, you are only as fast as the slowest thinker. You are only as brave as the most fearful heart in the room. By walking alone, you reclaim your full processing power. You aren't scanning the faces of your peers to see if your opinion is acceptable. You are scanning the horizon for opportunities and threats. This is why the most dangerous men in history, the strategists, the empire builders, the icons, always had a desert period, a time where the noise was cut off and the iron was forged in total isolation. Most people mistake being alone for being lonely. They couldn't be more wrong. Loneliness is a state of lack. Solitude is a state of abundance. When you are lonely, you are waiting for someone to bring you a cup of water. When you are in solitude, you are digging your own well. Thomas Shelby doesn't retreat to his study or the hills of Wales because he's sad. He retreats because the world is too loud to think in. He knows that every minute spent in the company of fools is a minute spent eroding his own edge. Think about the last time you were truly alone. No phone, no music, no digital ghost hovering over your shoulder. For most, that thought is terrifying. They realize they don't actually like the person they are left with. But the man who masters the Shelby mode finds his greatest ally in that mirror.
Walking alone makes you dangerous because it forces you to develop a closed-circuit psychology. You become your own source of heat. You become your own judge. In a world that is obsessed with likes, shares, and the constant buzzing feedback of the internet, the man who can sit in a dark room and make a decision without asking for a second opinion is a superpower. He is a glitch in the system. While everyone else is waiting for a consensus, he has already acted. He has already moved. He has already won, because he didn't have to wait for the committee to give him permission to be great. Look at the eyes of a man who spent his life in the crowd versus the eyes of a man who has walked through the fire alone. The first pair of eyes is constantly shifting, looking for the exits, looking for approval. The second pair is still, leaden, focused. When you walk alone, Your peripheral vision sharpens. You stop looking at the people and start looking at the chessboard. You notice the subtle shifts in the wind. You hear the floorboard creak before the door even opens. This hyper-awareness is the birthright of the solitary. It is the mode in its purest form. It is the realization that the only person who can truly protect you and the only person who can truly destroy you is currently inhabiting your skin. You must understand that the world will try to punish you for this. They will call you arrogant. They will call you weird. They will try to pull you back into the warmth of the herd, not because they love you, but because your independence makes them realize how cold and afraid they actually are. They hate the mirror you hold up to them. But every step you take away from their expectations is a step toward your own throne. You aren't being edgy. You aren't being antisocial. You are being strategic. You are choosing the quality of your own mind over the quantity of their company. As the fog begins to lift and the city wakes up, the man who has spent the night walking alone is miles ahead of those who just opened their eyes. He has already fought his demons. He has already mapped out his war. He is prepared for the chaos because he has already mastered the stillness. This is where the journey begins, not in the roar of the crowd, but in the silence of the path.
To move from the philosophy of the solitary path into the actual architecture of power, we must look at how this internal silence is translated into external dominance. Thomas Shelby doesn't just walk alone to think. He walks alone to build a version of himself that is impenetrable. This is the stage where most men fail. They can handle an hour of silence, but they cannot handle the structural changes required to become truly self-reliant. The architecture of self-reliance begins with the decoupling of validation. In the modern era, your brain is being hijacked by a constant loop of social feedback. Every time you check a notification, you are asking the world for permission to feel good about yourself. Thomas Shelby has deleted that loop. He operates on a closed-circuit system. If he decides a move is right, it is right, even if the world, his family, and his enemies all tell him he's insane. This isn't stubbornness, it's the ultimate form of psychological sovereignty. To apply this, you must start making invisible gains. Do things that improve your life, training, reading, investing, without telling a soul. The moment you post your progress on social media, you have traded the actual power of the achievement for the cheap dopamine of a stranger's like. You have diluted the iron. By keeping your wins in the dark, you harden them. You become dangerous because no one knows where your strength is coming from. This leads us to the concept of the information vacuum. In any negotiation or social interaction, the person who speaks the least holds the most leverage. Why? Because the human brain abhors a vacuum. When you walk into a room with the energy of a man who is comfortable being alone, people will instinctively try to fill the silence. They will over-explain. They will reveal their weaknesses. They will offer more than they intended just to bridge the gap between you and them. This is the Shelby frame. You aren't being quiet because you have nothing to say. You are being quiet because you are observing the chessboard. You are letting them exhaust their ammunition while you remain fully loaded. This is how you win without saying a word. Your presence becomes a mirror that reflects their own insecurities back at them. But self-reliance isn't just about silence, it's about strategic ghosting. There is a specific power in being able to disappear. In the series, Tommy often vanishes to the hills or to a quiet room when the pressure is at its peak. This isn't an escape, it's a recalibration. When you are constantly accessible, you are a commodity. When you are difficult to reach, you are a luxury. By intentionally limiting your availability, you force the world to value your time. More importantly,
You give yourself the mental fortress necessary to process complex problems without the interference of other people's fears. Most men make decisions based on the collective anxiety of their social circle. The solitary man makes decisions based on the cold reality of the facts.
This brings us to the return of the ghost. The ultimate goal of walking alone isn't to stay in the shadows forever. It's to return to the world with an energy that is unshakable. When you have spent enough time in your own company, you develop a stillness that cannot be faked. It's in the way you hold eye contact. It's in the way you don't fidget when there is tension in the air. It's the realization that you have already faced the harshest critic, yourself, and survived. You are no longer performing for the crowd. You are simply existing in a space that you own. However, we must be honest about the cost of power. True solitude is a heavy crown. There is a reason Thomas Shelby often looks exhausted, even when he's winning. To be the one who doesn't look for a nod of approval means you are also the one who carries the full weight of the failure if things go wrong. Most men are too weak for this. They want the Shelby look without the Shelby load. They want the respect of the solitary man while still clinging to the safety of the herd. You cannot have both. You must be willing to be misunderstood. You must be willing to be the villain in someone else's story if it means staying true to your own vision. As you move through your day, remember that every interaction is a test of your center of gravity. Are you leaning toward them, or are you staying centered in yourself? If you found yourself nodding along to things you don't believe, or staying in circles that drain your spirit, it's time to go for a walk. Leave the phone, leave the excuses, step out into the cold, and see who you are when the world isn't watching. If you are among the few who value the power of silence over the noise of the crowd, then you have found your circle here. We don't care for the masses, we care for the architects of their own destiny. If this resonance has reached you, join the mode. Like this video to signal your intent and subscribe to anchor yourself in the psychology of power. The world is getting louder, but we are getting quieter, and in that quiet, we find our strength.